While the national media was busy writing Florida's obituary, something else was happening entirely. In 2020, the land where Wildlight now stands was pine forest, scrub oak, and silence, 20 miles north of Jacksonville. By early 2025, it had a Publix, a YMCA, a functioning downtown, and 4,200 residents who weren't there 5 years ago. At full build-out, planners project 30,000 people. A city conjured from nothing. That's not the Florida story you've been hearing. You've heard about the insurance collapse, the condo assessments, the foreclosure spike. All of that is real. But here's what's also real. Florida issued more than 125,000 single-family building permits in 2024, more than any other state in the nation, by a significant margin. So which story is true? Both. And that tension is exactly what this video is about. Somewhere on this list is a town that Zillow flagged as a top 10 housing market nationally, and most Floridians couldn't point to it on a map. That's open loop number one. And then there's Dave and Linda Kowalski, retired teachers from Columbus, Ohio, who moved to one of these towns in early 2024. Their adult children thought they were making a catastrophic mistake. Their kids may want to revisit that conversation. 10 towns. 10 different stories of why people are voting with their moving trucks. Let's start with the one that surprised even the analysts. Westlake, Palm Beach County. Say that name to someone who grew up in Boca Raton, and they'll pause. 8 years ago, it wasn't a name. It was a field. Minto Communities incorporated Westlake in 2016 with exactly 0 residents. Not a small town, not a quiet suburb. 0. A blank grid on a planning document, a $2.1 billion bet that people would come. By the first quarter of 2025, 6,800 people had proved them right. But here's the number that stops analysts. 847 single-family permits pulled in 2024 alone, in a city younger than most people's youngest children. That's not gradual growth. That's a city materializing in real time. The median home price sits at $478,000, up 14% year over year. For Palm Beach County, that's practically a discount. Young families who got priced out of Wellington and Boca Raton looked at Westlake's Turnpike access, its Palm Beach County job market, and its brand new elementary school, opened within 18 months of the first residents arriving, and made the calculation quickly. The infrastructure didn't precede the people, it chased them. 4,500 more homes are still permitted, but Westlake was built by a single developer with a master plan and $2.1 billion in committed capital. The next town on this list grew just as fast, with no master plan at all. Wildlight, Nassau County. 20 miles north of Jacksonville, on land a timber company spent decades growing pine trees on before deciding people were a better crop. In 2021, roughly 400 residents called Wildlight home. By the end of 2025, that number had climbed to 4,200. At full build-out, the projection is 30,000. Nassau County issued 2,847 residential permits in 2024, a county record and not by a little. And here's where the excitement gets complicated. When Wildlight Elementary opened its doors in fall 2024, it opened at 110% capacity. Day one. The ink's still fresh on the certificate of occupancy, and the school was already over its limit. Demand didn't just meet the infrastructure, it blew straight past it. The hospital situation tells the same story. Nassau County's nearest major medical facility sits 25 miles away. A new medical campus was announced in 2024, but it won't open until 2027. So who's coming, knowing all of this? Remote workers from Jacksonville, primarily, people who want the quiet without the commute, and retirees from the Northeast, drawn by Nassau County's 0.89% average property tax rate, well below the statewide 1.1%. The median home price is $389,000. That math makes sense to a lot of people. The next town tells you exactly where they're coming from, and the numbers are staggering. Parrish, Manatee County. In 2020, the U.S. Census counted 32,000 people here. By the end of 2025, estimates put that number at 54,000, a 69% increase in 5 years. The engine is simple, and it fits in one number. $108,000. That's the gap between the median home price in Tampa proper, $520,000, and the median in Parrish, which sits at $412,000. For a family stretching toward a mortgage, that difference isn't a preference, it's a decision. Take Interstate 75 south, drive 35 to 45 minutes, and buy a house you can actually afford. Dave and Linda Kowalski did exactly that. The retired teachers from Columbus had been renting in Riverview, watching Tampa prices climb past anything they'd budgeted for. Then Linda saw something online. Costco was coming to Parrish, a new interchange on Interstate 75 approved in 2024. A Publix already open. She called Dave in from the backyard. It's not a field anymore, she told him. It's a town. They closed in March 2024. They weren't alone. Manatee County pulled 6,200 residential permits that same year. Employers followed the rooftops. Amazon, a FedEx regional hub expansion, and a Publix distribution center all opened or expanded within 15 miles between 2023 and 2024. But Parrish is booming because of what it's near. The next town on this list is booming because of what it's becoming, and it involves a $2.4 billion investment. Babcock Ranch, Charlotte County. The name sounds like a cattle operation from a different century. In some ways it was. But what's happening there now belongs to a completely different story, one that starts with 700 acres of solar panels and ends with a number that stopped emergency managers cold. When Hurricane Ian made landfall in September 2022, it hit Charlotte County like a fist, one of the strongest storms to strike the continental United States in decades. Some neighborhoods waited 21 days for the grid to come back. Babcock Ranch lost power for 4 hours. 4 hours, while the county around it went dark for weeks, this 18,000-acre community flickered, stabilized, and kept running. The solar array, the largest in any American residential community, fed the grid during the storm and kept feeding it after. Residents ran their air conditioning, charged their phones, slept in their own beds. In the 30 days following Ian, website inquiries for Babcock Ranch jumped 340%. People didn't just admire it, they wanted in. The population was around 5,000 in 2023. Projections put it at 19,500 by 2028. D.R. Horton alone pulled 612 permits here in 2024. Median home price, $459,000. And because of the construction standards and solar infrastructure, homeowners report insurance premiums running 18 to 24% below the Charlotte County average. In Florida's insurance environment right now, that's not a perk, that's a lifeline. Babcock Ranch solved the insurance problem with engineering. The next town solved it with location. Ocala, Marion County. Essay with that for a second, because this is the town from the beginning of this video. The one Zillow flagged as a top 15 market nationally. The one most Floridians couldn't place on a map. In 2020, Ocala's population was 63,000. By 2025, estimates put it at 78,000. Marion County issued 4,100 residential permits in 2024, up 38% from 2022. Those are strong numbers, but the number that genuinely changes the conversation is $289,000. That's the median home price, the lowest on this entire list, 44% below Florida's statewide median of $415,000. Picture Marcus Webb, a warehouse logistics coordinator from Orlando, sitting at his kitchen table in late 2023, running the same spreadsheet for the 4th time because he doesn't believe the output. A 3-bedroom house in Ocala for less than $300,000. 45 minutes from the Florida Horse Park. 45 minutes from a FedEx ground hub that opened in 2023 with 500,000 square feet and 1,200 jobs, where he'd just been offered a position. He called his wife in from the other room. The math actually works, he said. It actually works. It works because Ocala built something real. Amazon has a delivery station here. The area holds Qualified Opportunity Zone designation, pulling $180 million in investment commitments since 2023. And surrounding all of it, 1,200 horse farms, giving Marion County an identity that no master-planned community can manufacture. Zillow's appreciation ranking wasn't a mistake. It was a recognition. But Ocala's growth runs on affordability and logistics jobs. The next town runs on something else entirely: Daytona Beach Shores and Port Orange, Volusia County. Two names that probably conjure spring break footage and NASCAR noise, not exactly the image of a quietly surging housing market. But in 2024, while condo prices across Florida were collapsing under the weight of Surfside-era assessments and insurance chaos, median condo prices in Daytona Beach Shores rose 19% year over year, in a year when the statewide condo market was hemorrhaging value. The reason matters, and it's specific. Newer construction here was already built to post-Surfside structural standards. Buyers weren't inheriting someone else's deferred maintenance bill. In a market defined by fear, that distinction became worth serious money. But the deeper engine isn't the beach, it's the hospital. In 2023, Advent Health opened a $400 million regional medical campus in Volusia County, creating 2,200 jobs almost overnight. Halifax Health followed with a $180 million facility expansion. Suddenly, this corridor became one of the densest healthcare employment clusters between Orlando and Jacksonville. Medical professionals, including nurses, administrators, and imaging technicians, started doing the math. Why pay Orlando rent when Port Orange's median home price sits at $349,000? Volusia County issued 3,800 residential permits in 2024, UP 29% year over year. A Whole Foods is announced for 2026, the infrastructure chasing the people again. What's your read on the healthcare job angle? Did you see that coming? Drop it in the comments. But Volusia's boom is anchored by employment. The next town's growth is anchored by something even more fundamental: raw population pressure. Wesley Chapel, Pasco County. In 2020, Wesley Chapel's population was 58,000. By the end of 2025, estimates put it at 89,000. That's 31,000 additional people in 5 years in a community that isn't even an incorporated city. Technically, it's unincorporated Pasco County, no mayor, no city council. It just grew past the point where that matters. Pasco County pulled 7,100 residential permits in 2024, fourth highest county total in Florida. An Interstate 275 and State Road 56 interchange puts downtown Tampa 35 minutes away, close enough to commute, far enough to afford something. The median home price is $399,000. For Tampa adjacent, that's still a deal. But here's the number that genuinely reframes Wesley Chapel's trajectory. Pasco County's median buyer age dropped from 2019 to 2024, the youngest shift of any county on this entire list. This isn't retirees chasing sunshine. This is young families making long-term bets. A new high school opened in 2024 with a 2,400 student capacity. It's already at 87%. Baycare opened a second hospital campus here in 2023. The shops at Wiregrass and Tampa Premium Outlets generated $1.2 billion in sales tax revenue for Pasco County last year alone. If you live in Wesley Chapel or considered moving there, what made it land on your radar? Drop that in the comments. Wesley Chapel is attracting young families building roots. The next town is attracting a completely different demographic. Lee County. Say that name to anyone who followed Hurricane Ian and watch their expression shift. September 2022, a Category 4 storm that carved through Fort Myers, Cape Coral, and the Barrier Islands with $112 billion in damage. The costliest hurricane in Florida history. The conventional wisdom hardened fast. Lee County was going to take a generation to recover. The data didn't get that memo. In 2024, Lee County issued 5,400 residential building permits, up 61% from the post-Ian low of 2023, in a county national headlines had quietly written off. Picture a contractor named Ray Delgado standing in a half-framed house in Estero in January 2025, watching 3 more foundations being poured down the street. "I've been building here 22 years, he told a local reporter. "I've never seen a backlog like this." Here's why. Wealthy buyers from the Northeast and Midwest looked at Ian's destruction and saw something counterintuitive: an opportunity to buy newer, better-built homes at prices still below pre-storm peaks. Estero's median sits at $529,000, up 11% year over year. Bonita Springs, $612,000, up 8%. And in 2024, FEMA's revised flood maps removed 4,200 Estero parcels from high-risk zones, cutting insurance costs significantly in a state where insurance costs everything. Then Hertz relocated its corporate headquarters here, bringing 1,800 professional jobs. Lee County rebuilt with resilience. The next town story is different. It was never broken. It was simply overlooked. Now, before we get to the pattern that ties all of this together, here's something worth having if you own property in Florida or you're weighing one of these moves yourself. Every town worth buying into and every town worth steering clear of is now in one place. 40 Florida towns, 20 rated to buy and 20 rated to avoid, in a single guide called the Florida Buy and Avoid List for 2026, with the real numbers on prices, insurance, and risk for everyone. The link is in the description if you'd rather have the finished list than assemble it yourself from the permit data and the heat maps. But stay right here, because the single pattern that connects all 10 of these booms and the one couple whose $89,000 paper gain proves it is the part almost nobody is talking about, and it's coming up next. Lakeland, Polk County. Pull up a map of I-4 and find the midpoint between Tampa and Orlando. You're looking at it. 35 miles in either direction. For decades, that position felt like a consolation prize, too close to the big cities to have its own identity, too far to absorb their energy. That's changing fast, and the numbers explain exactly why. In 2020, Lakeland's population was 117,000. By the end of 2025, estimates put it at 138,000. Polk County issued 6,800 residential permits in 2024, third highest in Florida. But the number that genuinely reframes Lakeland's story isn't the population count, it's the income figure. Median household income in Lakeland grew 14% between 2021 and 2024. Faster than Tampa, faster than Orlando. In a city where the median home price is $319,000, roughly 30% below both of those metros. Incomes rising faster than the big cities, costs sitting dramatically below them, that's a structural advantage quietly compounding. The logistics infrastructure explains the income surge. Amazon operates 3 facilities within 15 miles of downtown Lakeland. Publix World Headquarters is here, employing 7,500 people. The Port of Tampa Bay's inland distribution network runs directly through Polk County, and Lakeland Regional Health's $350 million expansion created 1,100 jobs between 2023 and 2024 alone. Does Lakeland's in-between position appeal to you or feel like a drawback? Drop your honest take in the comments. Lakeland is the geographic middle of this list. The final town is the geographic outlier, the one that breaks every pattern we've seen, sitting in a corner of Florida most of these other towns don't even share a media market with. And it may be the most important boom story of 2026. Every single one of them has at least 2 of the following: a major employer anchor, a significant infrastructure investment, including a road, a hospital or a military expansion, a meaningful price gap relative to a nearby major metro, and post-2022 construction built to updated codes. Remove any one of those ingredients and the growth slows. Stack 2 or more together and you get Westlake, you get Ocala, you get Parrish. Speaking of Parrish, remember Dave and Linda Kowalski, the retired teachers from Columbus whose adult children thought they were making a catastrophic mistake? Dave and Linda closed on their Parrish home in March 2024 for $398,000. By early 2025, Zillow's estimated value had climbed to $487,000. That's an $89,000 paper gain in under 18 months. Their kids, the ones who called the move reckless, are now calling Dave and Linda for advice. That's not luck. That's pattern recognition. Here's the reframe that matters most. The doom narrative about Florida isn't wrong. The insurance collapse is real. The condo assessment crisis is real. The foreclosure pressure in certain coastal zip codes is real, but it's happening in specific markets, not across the entire state. Meanwhile, the boom is also real. It's happening in different zip codes, driven by different fundamentals, attracting different buyers. The viewers who understand that distinction are making materially better decisions. These 10 towns are no longer secrets. The data is public. Zillow's market heat rankings, county permit records, FEMA's revised flood maps, it's all sitting there, available to anyone willing to look past the headline. Pull up Zillow's market trends for any county on this list, cross-reference the permit data, and ask where the next hospital is being built and the next interchange approved. The question was never whether Florida was over. The question was always which Florida you were watching. Now you know which towns answered that question loudest. Drop the one that surprised you most in the comments and tell us which one you're watching in 2026. And if the pattern across these 10 towns surprised you, subscribe to FloridaPulse and join the people watching Florida's real numbers, not just its loudest headlines. And here's one final data point worth sitting with before you close this tab. In 2020, the year this story really starts, Florida's net domestic in-migration was roughly 220,000 people. In 2024, that number was 365,000, a 66% increase in just 4 years, even as the headlines about insurance and assessments grew louder. That's not a coincidence. That's a signal. The people moving aren't ignoring the problems. Many of them know exactly what the problems are. They're simply doing the math on which zip codes carry those problems and which ones don't. The pine forest that became Wildlight, the cattle land that became Babcock Ranch, the overlooked midpoint that became Lakeland. None of those stories were visible in the national narrative. They were visible in the permit data, the employer announcements, the FEMA map revisions. That's where the next chapter is being written right now, not in the headlines, but in the numbers that most people scroll past. Florida's obituary was premature. It always was. The question was never whether the state was growing. The question was always where, and whether you were paying close enough attention to see it before everyone else did.